There's another set of Creation Moments videos out there, claiming because we can't survive in a climate like some animals do, we aren't animals. This cannot stand. Let's take a look.
Popular science magazines and school textbooks have, for more than a century now, repeated the theme that mankind evolved from the animal kingdom. Have you ever stopped to think what this means?
That at some level we're related to every living thing on the planet, and that no matter how diverse two creatures are, they can still trace their roots back to a single organism? That we have evolved over billions of years and have become so different from other creatures, but in the beginning we all came from the same self-replicating molecules? I mean, I find that fascinating, don't you?
Those of us who live where the winters are very cold know fully well that human beings could not survive outside as the animals do.
So, that's a false comparison. Not all animals can survive out in a cold winter. Animals have evolved over the years to fit the environment they find themselves in. As creatures slowly emigrated to different locations, they gained ways to survive better in those new environments and lost some of the advantage they would have had in their original habitats. But this takes time and generations of trial and error through natural selection. It will not happen overnight. If you were to take an ostrich, something that had evolved to take advantage of desert climates, and dump it in the Arctic Circle, it would not last long. Similarly, if you took a polar bear and set it free in the desert, chances are you would have a dead bear rather quickly. Animals evolved to take advantage of the area they live in. Given a sudden change, their offspring would not likely evolve the features they would need to survive.
We need the protection of clothes and shelter, but the Creator has provided for the winter needs of the animal kingdom.
Clothing was one of the earliest technologies that humans developed. As we moved to harsher climates, we had the ability to protect ourselves and our offspring. That means there was not as much environmental pressure to change our morphology as there was for animals who were dependent solely on their bodies to survive. There were still changes, but we've retarded the need for these changes in our species by creating tools instead, such as wearing warm clothes. So, mutations and natural selection provided for the winter needs for most animals, while our tool use provided for us.
Dogs, for example, if living outside, develop a thicker coat in winter. Does human body hair become thicker under cold conditions? Not at all.
Evolution, compared to the human timescale, is a slow process. On a geological scale, it's quite rapid. But we evolved our basic structure in a warm environment. Humans are from Africa, which has a much different climate than, say, my home here in Canada. Humans developed tools before some groups started emigrating out of Africa. This was a twofold issue. One, tool use allowed us to adapt the environment to suit us better, and it hampered, didn't stop, I want to be sure you understand that, our need to evolve. The humans that moved to colder climates didn't need to evolve heavy fur when they could simply create coverings to protect themselves from the harsher elements. Putting on clothes would be an instantaneous fix to being cold, not something that would take generations to develop, with uncountable loss of life before we evolved it. Now we have hit the point where we are dependent on technology like clothing to survive in some climates. Dogs, and some other mammals that evolved in cold climates, evolved a hormonal response to when the day-night cycle starts to change, growing a thicker coat in response to longer days. Great apes, of which we are a member, evolved in warmer climates, so we never had the pressure to evolve such a change. And when we did move to colder climates, we had already developed clothing and other tools as a response to colder temperatures.
Next time, we'll look at even more reasons why animals can comfortably spend winter outside, but we humans would freeze to death.
Next time, looks like a two-parter. We'll be right back. Today's episode was brought to you by physics. Without physics, nothing much would ever happen. Welcome back. Let's see what they have for part 2.
Many animals store fat to carry them through the winter, and their metabolic rate slows down so that they require less food.
Yes, animals that evolved in colder climates have adapted the ability to store fat for the colder seasons. Here's a quick science lesson for you. There are two types of fat, brown and white fat. Brown fat has large amounts of iron in it and is used to burn calories in order to generate heat. It burns but doesn't store calories. White fat is what we normally think of when we discuss fat. It's the energy reserves of the body, which can be converted to brown by exercising. Different animals have different ratios and amounts of brown to white fat. Animals in cold environments evolve their bodies to take advantage of both these types of fat. They use brown fat to generate heat to keep from freezing to death, and white as insulation and energy stores. Humans have not had the pressure to evolve our fat stores to the extent of animals from a cold environment because our ability to create tools allows us to survive, effectively bypassing natural pressures to select offspring that are better equipped for the cold.
The fat they store and their metabolism are carefully coordinated and are often very different even between males and females of the same species.
Yes, it's almost as if different animals have adapted to protect themselves from the elements in different ways. But here's the thing, if animals didn't adapt in a way that helps them survive, they won't survive. It doesn't have to be the same change for every species, just ones that work. And since the ones that work best get passed on by the survivors, that results in the specialized fat and metabolism for each species, even differences between genders of the same species.
The bottom line is that the animals survive the winter and finish up in the springtime looking sleek and trim. Just the reverse usually happens in the case of man. We tend to eat more in winter and in springtime often have the waistline to show for it.
Animals at the end of a cold winter end up sleek and trim because they have not been taking much in the way of food, either because they were hibernating or with less food available due to the weather. Most plants don't grow very well in the snow, so animals will consume more food than they need before the winter comes for the lean times that will be approaching. Afterwards, the excess fat they built up before the winter has hit has been burned off, resulting in their sleek appearance. Humans, on the other hand, usually end up taking in more calories over the winter to generate our own brown and white fat. But since our food acquisition can go on non-stop, we store enough over the winter that we don't need to slow down our consumption, and we can import from other warmer climates. We are not as desperate for calories and we can build up our fat reserves over the winter instead of before it. We also tend to stay indoors more during the winter, burning less calories. Our method of winter survival works for us and does not need any major changes in our bodies to survive.
If human beings had evolved from the animals, we would expect a much greater similarity between how animals and humans cope with winter.
Not all animals evolved the same way. Between animals in a cold climate, there are not always similarity in how they cope with the winter. Some hibernate, some build up layers of fur and fat, some migrate to warmer climates, and some adapted to be better hunting over the snow. Some, like us, even build impressive shelters to protect themselves from the elements. If we were in a cold climate and had no way to survive outside of our own bodies, no tools, no clothes, no highly insulated structures, we would have either evolved some way to survive the cold or would have died off.
Nope, human beings never have been part of the animal kingdom.
Then, by your reasoning, all creatures that couldn't survive the cold are not part of the animal kingdom. I'm looking forward to your upcoming video where you explain how lions are not animals. That should be an interesting one. Seriously, we are animals. Animals that evolved in warm climates, but developed tools that allowed us, among other things, to access different biomes without having to massively evolve our bodies. It's as simple as that.